Some decent performances in other champions, but with such a top-heavy champion pool, they've obviously gone for the gambit, throwing their young player to the wolves. First game, it's not like he was shocking, he just couldn't get it done in a high-pressure environment.
And interestingly, we have an Annie ban, actually, from KT, now that they are on that blue side. You mentioned those Annie statistics. That's another loss for Annie, actually, that last game, but still a very overwhelming 70+% win ratio within champions here in Korea. Kalista, the first ban on the red side.
Given that poke and control mages have been so popular, Annie's one of the few ways to deal with it, especially from the support position. And wow, we're going really deep on the support bans. Only Alistair really looms as one of those real top-tier supports.
Najin, are they going to ban the Rise themselves? They were suckered into picking it in the match against Jin Air, and it really didn't work. Have they learned how to shut it down on their own? And it's actually Najin that will ban the Gragas.
Interesting to see where Rek'Sai falls in the priority. We've seen first pick Rek'Sai's come out in a couple of series. Suddenly, if you lock in Rek'Sai on KT, what does Watch have left? Maybe even the Lee Sin.
Such as Jin Air against Najin in the last match. They really showed how powerful that Rek'Sai can be with a good jungler against Najin EM Fire. And there's the Alistair, so it looks like they are setting themselves up for that first pick Rise or the first pick Rek'Sai. Najin could leave Rise up again and think that they're going to get it in the first round of the draft on the red side.
3 bans against Pure. Mentioned already, 8 and 6 games respectively on the Alistair and the Nautilus. Of course, we saw Annie, I believe, for the second time come through from this team, so going to also be extended champion pools in the support role. The Rise auto ban comes through. Rek'Sai first pick looms as a very popular choice.
That has to be it, I think, for KT. They must have been watching those Jin Air games, saw the weakness that Watch had when he was forced onto a tertiary pick like Evelynn, and there it is. So KT going to emulate Jin Air's draft from the blue side and see if they can put Watch in a similar situation where he's not able to hard carry the game to the same degree he did last time.
My guess is Lee Sin, because that's the one champion where you can hard carry the early game and then go more to the peel style that we saw when we were watching the replays of Watch's MVP performance in Game 1. Gonna flash the Echo, jungle Echo, Echo in the mid. Hasn't had a lot of success so far in Champions.
No, it definitely hasn't been a big pickup here in Korea. Of course, some players have had some pretty good experiences with it in the West.
And let's say the word yet when we talk about the picks.
Yeah.
This champion does so much that I'm sure Echo will really push out as a top pick. But for now, teams just haven't really worked either playing around him or even really mastering which role is optimal for this champion.
Duke going with the early Rumble this time around. That is a champion that fell all the way through picks and bans in the last game, despite being very popular here in the Korean scene. And Watch is going to go on that Evelynn again. Now, he was found out very easily with the Tremor Sense by Chaser. How smart is Score going to be with his pathing in this game? Do they have a plan to deal with Watch's Evelynn like Jin Air did?
I think you also want to prioritize some semblance of a pick support. Now, awkwardly, you've banned out 3 of them, KT. But I feel like Thresh might be the pick here, just so that you have something that can easily roam into mid, just like we see so often from Snowflower, and add pick pressure, because you have so much extra information about Evelynn when you have the Tremor Sense. So pick initiation from support could be powerful.
Fixer also an excellent Thresh player, one of the best in Korea. So taking something like that could be noteworthy. The Azir was banned last game by Najin, and she may just want to go for the Victor one more time, but that probably just means that Goog's going to play Cassiopeia again. And Arrow, interestingly, moving away from the Sivir and onto an early pick Corki. I understand the Victor. The Corki pick here is a bit questionable.
It's actually a shocking time to decrease your Sivir priority, because Sivir's so wonderful against Rumble. That quick burst of speed gets you away from multiple ticks of the Equalizer. It's one of the champions that often answers an early Rumble pick or complements an early Rumble pick. But in this situation, freely open to OQ. Maybe they'll actually keep their AD carry position for last and then try and see if it's safe times for Vayne. But so far, we're waiting to see. They're flashing the Xerath, but only GBM really confident enough to go with that pick.
No, I think that definitely here you go for the Thresh. You take that again for Pure. You take the Sivir, or you just you grab a mid laner right now, Cassiopeia, and then go for that Vayne last, the old Najin special this season. But they're going to lock in the Sivir and the Thresh. So what exactly is Fixer going to be playing here?
The big pick, of course, he's played commonly, but specifically against Corki was, of course, the Braum, which he still has a 2-1 record on. Very unique in the Braum picking. Dirty Braum picker, I believe we've leveled against him now. I believe is it 5.11 or 5.12 that slight Braum buffs come through?
I believe that's 5.12.
It might be. I'm not 100% clear. I believe you're right in that case. But Braum still, look, he's not a laning champion, but can do some interesting things in the team fight. I don't really like it in this particular comp, but it's definitely the champion that Fixer's played the most that's actually still available this draft.
So, Maokai, some days most played champion so far this season, has a very good win rate on it. Fixer maybe defaulting to some peel right here with the Janna, and that means that Score and Edge are going to have a lot of time just to poke from the back line, and that'll be how they want to play out these team fights. Oh my, here we go again.
Okay. Now, Renekton can mess up a Rumble. That is a very good 1v1 lane matchup, reminiscent of the Riven matchup, but of course, itemizing more on the tanky side usually, although from the previous game, definitely was focusing on damage. Can they actually play around it? Because notably, despite having a pretty good 1v1 matchup, we did not see Score path around Someday very much, or even in the game against SKT, when we saw Someday break out the Riven, we still wasn't seeing Score path around the favorable 1v1 top lane matchups.
Also, KT here is really committing to kiting. They don't have any form of primary engage whatsoever. You're going to have to get pretty lucky to get in slice and dice range.
Speaking of kiting.
Yeah, and I think that something like a poke champion would be very good for Najin right here if they can get it off, but instead they're going to play the Cassiopeia, also a great champion for kiting. Najin with the engage. Watch has to be there with the flanks in order to make this work, but KT, they can't fight if they get behind in this game, and Najin has a position on a Dragon or Baron. They do not have any tools for engage whatsoever. They are entirely reliant on Najin coming to them.
And after having a perfect game, Najin, in terms of the Dragon, 5-0, KT still opt into a comp that really needs to get an objective snowball and force the enemy to come to them. You talked about the fact that Watch could be initiated. You can just use that ult for disengage. Both these teams can play the disengage game, so the critical factor, what we're both looking for, whoever can get control of the neutrals, whether it's the outer turrets or specifically the Dragon, should have a massive compositional advantage against the enemy.
The thing is, at least Najin can engage. They have Sivir, they have Evelynn flanks, they have the equalizer to start off these fights. KT has nothing. Best case scenario, it's like Flash, Slice and Dice W, or Flash on Burrow is Rek'Sai. That's it. Those are the only tools. So I'm very wary of this KT composition. They have to get that lead. Najin at least has a bit more flexibility.
And someday, he needs to make this Renekton pick work. He needs to make us believers. It should win the 1v1 matchup, and maybe the top lane pressure will be enough to parlay everything else.
All right, let's get into game 2. KT versus Najin. Well, Najin up 1-0 here in this game. As we get into game 2, KT really wants to get into this one. Oh wow, we have an entire sentence being written here.
Where's Chobra when you need him? So Renekton. We know what he does. Although he was toned down a bit in the laning phase, we're expecting Duke to build primarily for the equalizer, primarily in terms of magic penetration, maybe work towards a Zhonya slowly. But this should be a laning matchup that Someday excels in. Weirdly though, we've seen Someday pick the Riven into Rumble. We've seen Someday now pick the Renekton into Rumble. Both those games, Score hasn't been pathing around Someday very much in the last few series, despite picking what is on paper excellent laning matchups.
Yeah, good gank. Well, it was a bit of a lane swap in that last one, and you know, now are we going to see standard lanes look like Thresh and Sivir heading up to the top side? So if Najin can dodge standard lanes again, that just like last time is going to be a pretty strong advantage for them. The main difference this game is that Arrow is on Corki, so at least if he gets that solo XP, he'll have that earlier power spike, which he was lacking in the last one. And Someday just going to go after the Raptors here after scraping his blade against the ground incessantly, and Okyu will freeze.
The 13-minute Trinity Force bore all the advantages Najin needed to get the Dragons, to really take over the bottom side of the map. That was what got them their big victory. So that's what Arrow will be trying to emulate.
Actually, Okyu walking up to the blue buff as well. He wanted to see what was going on. They played very aggressively. Going to lose some CS as a result of that movement, however, and Duke and Watch not really penalized. Pure is just going to walk in circles right now until his Trinket Ward comes up. Pop it right down next to the blue buff.
The isolated mid lane matchup, exact same one. Goong ran away from it, but it was mostly a non-factor between these two mid lanes. The game was played around mid lane last time out.
KT knows there's not going to be anything in this top side. A Fixer may have gotten eyes on the Gromp, so they're just going to go do that as we speak. Still a blue buff right there. It's being pinged by Najin at the moment, so they know there's a chance to 3-buff. Again, KT thinking that there may be a port from Duke, but Duke just not going down into that lane, of course, for the second game in a row. They're going to wait on this. Someday, back at base right now, going down to the bottom side. We could see a lane swap here, depending on how much damage can get down onto this turret. Still a freeze from Okyu in top.
So because KT actually got to lane late, remember we saw them taking a journey over to the blue buff, freezing wasn't as much of an option. It was always going to push either slow or fast. It wasn't going to be perfectly frozen like Sivir was able to push up in top. So what they've managed to do is go for the fast push around it. Evelynn and Thresh certainly won't provide too much. In fact, drawing out Rumble's teleport to try and keep this turret up.
Well, they know it's a 3v3 right now. Arrow taking a pot shot at Pure. Pure still level 1. 4v3 into the turret. What are they doing? Score just gives up first blood. What was that?
Yeah. That was curious, Monte Cristo.
That was quite curious indeed. Very unnecessary death right there for Score. And, you know, what they were trying to do in this was to get Someday into lane against Duke. But it didn't work. And now Watch here on the bottom side. Ooh, taking a look for this gank right now. He's going to be seen by Someday, so he's not going to actually get any damage off. But the entire thing, KT, what they wanted to do, so we saw Someday recall. That means that Score is sitting at that turret to help proxy the wave so they can reverse it, so that Someday will have a long lane to play against Duke in and use that Renekton advantage. Instead, Score gets caught under the turret and dies, and therefore that advantage kind of just evaporates.
And 2 games in a row, this is what's happened in the early game. Remember, in the previous game, Okyu got the solo kill onto Someday to really set behind Someday, entered lane against Maokai, even or behind in both experience and items, notably only had a Doran Blade after his first back. In this situation, Okyu's able to freeze top, get solo experience and gold once again is donated over to Najin. So early game rotations and play from KT. First, almost getting 3-buffed multiple games and then just dying unnecessarily. It's not really what we expected from a team that at the start of the season, honestly, was one of the best at executing both the early game and the rotational game.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a fall for them, certainly. But by that token, too, Najin has been pretty consistently on the rise. Since they've stuck to this one roster, you can really see the synergy developing between the players. Edge getting poked out here by Goong. Goong just having a field day in that mid lane. Score may be coming for a gank right here, but not sure Edge is going to be able to really follow up on that. He is highly poisoned right now and doesn't have a death ray.
Despite this being a battle for
they know Watch is there.
Score is coming through, gets the chilling smite on Burrow as well. Will there be enough damage? It hits level 6, very low, flashes away though. Watch is very squishy but gets away as well. Najin managed to make the evasive maneuvers and no one dies in mid.
No, nobody dies. Goong has to burn his flash. So no summoners expended by KT Rolster. That ultimate for ultimate, and that means that there's going to be some denial here in the mid lane, depending on how much CS Watch wants to take at this point in time. But Okyu, again, very far ahead. The side lane so in favor of NJE Empire. And when you make a lane swap like that after the minion waves have gone down, you're just going to miss some CS. That's it. You have to take that penalty if you want to go back to standard lanes after starting out in the swap.
Absolutely, as Someday once again has a CS disadvantage, so both carries quite a long way behind their opposite numbers, despite the tender age, 7 minutes only into this game. If Najin go on to win this series, Montegris, they would have lost 3 games. Notably, they'll finish 4th in terms of this half of the season, only having lost to the likes of Anarchy in the first series, which was a bit of an aberration. It was the first series, and then you're going to talk about losses to SKT and Jin Air, of course. So, honestly, that's really good reading if you're a Najin fan.
Yeah, and especially this team that had such a poor showing in the spring season, the most frustrating team easily because of their amount of talent on paper that you really had to feel your Najin fan was not being used optimally with all of the roster swaps and the promising players not being used in a lot of the games, and as well as OQ's individual performance being rocky, sometimes showing some incredible highs, but also some very questionable plays at times that cost his team either finishing a game quickly or entire games, period. And now everything seems to be evening out where they're finally able to grow and really start to live up to their potential.
And look, OQ did encapsulate that reputation with some rocky moments in the previous game, but crucially, the macro play was actually really good, and despite the fact that, once again, their lanes were winning, which has kind of been something they've always been pretty good at, the laning phase, because they've been playing the macro side of the game well as well, even with the slight brain fades, it didn't make a sizable difference in the game.
You know, I'm a bit questionable about that too, because even that one time that OQ kind of valked in and then had to back off with the Lantern, he knew the Lantern was there, and actually that aggressive move kind of sucked KT in into continuing that fight, which ended up very poorly for them. So Edge here going to get Petrifying Gaze. There's the slow. Shield comes in from Jana. Goong a little bit low. Flash forward for Edge, and there's the tornado. Goodbye, Goong. Edge with the kill.
But the roam from Fixer is the true MVP. What wonderful timing and Edge. Look, he could have been defensive. He could have just gotten out, but understood that with the exhaust and the flash available, there was real kill pressure onto Goong. So he wondered, especially after an objectively poor display in Game 1, could Edge make it work under the lights in front of a big crowd? But he's done really well.
Yep, turning that around, and they knew the flash was down from Goong also, so yet another reason to gank that. What?
So scratch that last comment. The overstay against Evelyn.
Wow, that is rookie error right there for sure. Not respecting a professional jungler on Evelyn. Can, of course, naturally have its downsides. Watch just using his flash and his ultimate to kill him. Someday wants the turret kill. There's the equalizer. It goes down, but Duke in a bit of trouble. Has to be lanterned away as the tides are turned by Score and Fixer for KT. So first turret. Why would you recall right there?
Very aggressive recall. That's a solo queue recall right there.
Steps away from the safety of his own turret.
You know he was in the shop as well. I'm going to get a big item buy. I'm feeling pretty... Oh.
Look at this sick advantage I have on Goong. All right, let's go for it. Well, Edge, gotta dot your I's and cross your T's there, little 17-year-old buddy.
Very, very tender age. 17 and a half, so...
Doesn't it make you... We were talking about this before the cast. Oh, Fixer actually going to get hooked right there. Shield down. Fixer going to be taking a visit to the black and white screen.
Something his compatriot Edge is obviously very known about. In the bottom lane, though, they're getting on to Duke. No equalizer available. We saw it used a moment ago. Renekton certainly does very good damage. You have to worry if you score, but confident enough, and they pick up the kill.
Yeah, just the dominance right there enough. Watch going to respond with a blue buff on the opposite side of the map. OQ still with the lane dominant CS score right now. Has that Avarice Blade to keep on snowballing it also. So pure visits there for a couple of Relic Shield procs, get some gold under your support, and then back off. So this game, much more interesting. Teams answering each other tit for tat, successful ganks from both sides.
OQ is the big benefactor, both of the early freeze, so his experience is able to pick up solo experience in the early game, but the Avarice Blade compounding the lead. Definitely a snowball item choice. We see that Petrifying Gaze once again is going to be 2v2. Edge is quite zoned out of this fight. Watch has a lot of health. Looks like no kills to be picked up.
And Pure there, waiting in the black, seeing if he can get a follow-up death sentence and turn it around. Score and Edge not going to commit to that when they have inadequate vision on the lower side of the river. Goong didn't have to use his flash right there either. It's another benefit of that situation for him. And there's Goong going in. Edge just finds himself all alone. There is no vision for him, and Goong with an all-in. Doesn't even have to flash for it. Edge just coming undone here a little bit in this game. That he's not making very good decisions.
Yeah, they're unforced errors. He did not have the defensive vision to be pushed up more than halfway up his lane against a high-damage mid laner like Cassiopeia. His dying, of course, relieves any pressure of taking this early Dragon. And the Dragon Snowball was 5-0 in the first game. It's going to be 1-0 to Najin here.
Yeah, and that you just can't make those kind of errors because he knew going into that situation that he didn't have flash, Goong did. So playing aggressively at all carries its risk, and Score was on the opposite side of the map, but he had already left trying to get some wards into the top side jungle, and that's a very bad decision from Edge.
So I really like the re-engage and aggression to pick up his first kill, Edge, but dying quickly to Evelynn afterwards, and now dying to give up an objective. In fact, a couple of objectives over to Najin. Could have started a snowball very early in this game.
Yeah, there are still some advantages though. This time Someday does have the kill. Tower advantage to KT also, which they can continue to pile on because there's only that one turret left, and they have Corki and Victor. Great poke, great siege as we enter the mid game. They can get that outer ring down and then regain control of the Dragon. But one sad fact of tonight at this point is that KT has yet to get a single Dragon in these two games.
Yeah, 6-0 is the Dragon score. Arrow doesn't have the Trinity Force. This is, of course, the timing when OQ, with his 2 kills, had already picked up Trinity Force. So won't have quite the turret killing pressure just yet. In fact, he's just going to go farm in an open lane. So not going to be even threatening any objectives on Corki around the 15-minute mark. Najin rotating a lot of members top. They want to break this top lane, and they want to do it right now.
They want to force the dive here if possible. Score is waiting to turn something around if he can. Someday's actually just going to get hooked and blown up. Dominus goes down. That's going to be a finisher on top of the equalizer. So Someday just walking forward into the enemy team. A lot of disrespect. Gets hit by the death sentence. I don't know why you would walk forward like that. Seems like KT just not playing well around these turrets today. Something is off in their communication. Score giving up that first blood very awkwardly, and now Someday not. I mean, that was, you don't walk up right there.
I mean, who's walked up so far this game? Let's actually just take stock of it. Score, Edge twice, and now Someday all just playing disrespectful, not safe, not having vision, and even having a lot of immediate threat. For Score, it was the turret in a very early turret push. For Someday, it was 4 members of the enemy team. Unforced errors is really the only way I can put it.
They're really making it easy for Najin, actually. There's not much to Najin's playmaking ability this game, honestly, because they're getting these breaks in terms of who is walking forward, who is recalling in very poor locations. Now they're taking advantage of it, and that's led them to a lead, but Fixer going to try and make a pick on a Pure right here. Lantern is down. He's got a flash.
Had his flash available, so he won't be guilty of the aggressive walk-ups that KT have been able to do. Some days free farming in bot top. We see the same story with Duke in bottom. Still waiting to be made a believer of the Renekton, though.
I think we're going to be waiting a long time, Papa Smithy.
Well, we might not see the Renekton again.
Maybe Jin will play Yasuo again in the next match, and we can have head-scratcher pick night.
But you can just get a Doran shield and you're immune to Cassiopeia damage, right?
I hear that's true. You know, it's a good lane matchup, honestly, Yasuo versus Cassiopeia. You could block her from getting a lot of Twin Fangs down on you, but outside of that lane, that's where things get a bit dicey.
Jin going to the meta certainly is a major proponent in their rise, though of course we'll talk a lot more about that in Series 2, which, you know, with all the mistakes from KT, might not be far away.
Yeah. I'm very surprised to see the Najin we're seeing tonight after those Jin games, because they looked just absolutely destroyed that day by Jin. Didn't really look like they were doing much at all, had no pressure, had no control of the tempo, but Najin just making KT march to the beat of their drum this evening. It looks like an entirely different team.
Just watching the CS values and items, no real massive pickups. Trinity Force from Arrow, though, is quite a significant one. It's a couple of minutes later. then OQ was able to pick it up in game 1, but that's just purely by virtue of being the only member of both teams to not have a scorer involvement.
But you have this Corki, and you have a Sivir who is knocking on the door of an Infinity Edge right now.
Average Blade probably about 300 gold as well by this point.
Yeah, so you have to be worried that this power spike timing window is quickly shrinking. And now more pressure onto Edge. Edge has both summoners, though.
It's worth knowing that with the build that the Renekton has been going, we saw more Malmortius and the early magic resist in general last game, because you're not going to have a high health pool, can actually sit on the equalizer for quite a long time because he's purely itemized magic resist. Maybe he'll be able to do consistent damage in the front, tussle up with the Sivir, who's always had trouble dealing with these big tanks, especially in the early game, and prove the point. He's actually very low on the map, but that's only because he's taking Grom.
And there we go. Hook lands, but no real follow-up. Goong, level 11, but not wanting to commit with his ultimate. So this is the bad part. We talked about the lack of engage on KT. They have to have the early position on this dragon. They're getting it this time. They are. We see that bottom wave since they pushed it up. KT must be in this position to contest the dragon. They have to have Najin come to them.
That's why I expect Duke to use a teleport early. Something Marin likes to do is just teleport to a turret rather than trying to be impactful with the teleport as if he was a teleport home guard Maokai or Hecarim. The other option, just group with your team early. Be there 5 members to be able to take vision. As you mentioned, if Najin have vision control, KT just have no way to force anything.
Well, they've let Najin into the river right now. They fell back just a tad, and now Najin getting their own wards up. Pink ward in the brush. Crab to the side of KT, but the dragon has spawned, and KT doesn't have a good way to engage this unless they make a pick. Watch is going to be seen with the tremor sense. Trying to zone out Okio could just walk around, though.
Edge has 1,400 gold in the bank. Arrow has 1,200. There's a lot of unspent gold, whereas Duke went back and bought a Leandri. So this equalizer is going to be doing a lot of damage. No Aegis completed yet. Definitely more optimum shots coming through for Najin. So if KT can kind of delay out this dragon, go back, spend their gold, there'll definitely be a team fight around Dragon that can look to fight on fairly equal footing. But for now, they're actually more just committing to the split push.
Well, they have control over the side waves. That's how KT wants to play this one.
Did you die a little?
I did.
From all your casting. Duke just going to clear waves in top. Watching the vision game, there's a nice pink ward onto Dragon. Just going to be cleared out, and just vision creation and deletion basically been the story of the last couple of minutes. This dragon has just sat idly.
Yes, it has. So interesting that Najin doesn't really want to commit to this. I feel they have that big advantage, and look at all that gold onto Edge in the mid lane. He doesn't really have much to fight with right now. Najin certainly could be taking this in a very good position.
And remember, if we do see a team fight, when you're sitting on 1,800 gold and your team's 2,000 behind, that's an effective 3,800 gold advantage from Najin, purely just because of bad shopping times for Edge.
He does seem to be getting exposed in this series for being a rookie player, not having that same level of foresight as a lot of the veterans in this game. Najin should start the dragon. They move that minion wave. Pure instead is just getting chunked out.
Takes his Phosphorus Bomb, Trinity Force proc from Corki, and moves away with his tail between his legs. Now, maybe he needs to go shop. Does this open time for Edge to get his massive shop in? Has Neil's a large rod and then some if he chooses to back. They don't have vision of him, though.
This is not the time to shop. Side waves are pushing forward. He cannot go back right now. They're going to try and steal. Can score, get it. He's going to go under the wall. Pure. Actually, Edge just gets hit by a massive equalizer right in the choke. Flash forward from Goong. And there you go. Twin Fang follow-up. Watch gets over the wall. Hits the Agony's Embrace. And now more poke. Just going into that choke point. Najin unable. Oh, actually, they did get the dragon right there. And now they're going to re-engage Someday, slicing and dicing out. And there we go. Score with the flash on Burrow. Arrow finds himself right in the sights of Duke and OQ. Duke picks up the kill, and now they're going to go back into the mid lane, and that's it. You see how many flashes had to be used. Scores had to flash on Burrow.
And to some
get
degree,
back into that fight.
And some degree, Najin open themselves up for the re-engage. Understand they still have the more powerful item timings. They still win 3 for 2 of the trade after taking the second dragon. Still a dragon shutout 20 minutes into game 2 of the series for Najin.
Yeah, and that dragon, look at how methodical it was. Najin playing a very safe game here, waiting until they had the side wave control, then going in on it.
You have to wonder why Edge is the one walking up to the unwarded brush. He was the one most aggressively positioned. It's a very nice flash ult from Evelyn. They could have just backed away. They'd already picked up a kill. They'd already picked up the objective. But at this point, they choose to re-engage. They hit the death sentence and then leads to the flash on bar. You can see, you mentioned flash has been used. Everything has been used here by KT, and they still lose the engage and also the dragon.
Yeah, Duke getting very scary in this game. Infinity Edge Static Shiv completed for OQ here at the 22-minute mark, and now the game is really going to start tilting in favor of Najin. They have the control over Dragon yet again, and KT has failed to get the lanes right in the early game, and they are now at a deficit as a result.
And it's 2 series in a row where I think picking favorable lane matchups for Someday and not empowering him to either split push or ganking his lane in favorable matchups is costing KT. What is the point of a Renekton who's 35 CS behind Rumble, who's always going to be a superior team fighter? No defensive vision for Someday to overextend on the Renekton, just like there was no defensive vision for him to play aggressive against Marin's Rumble when he was playing the Riven that game. What is Someday to do, and why are they picking these lane-dominant champs if they're not willing to comp or play around them?
Well, it's also an issue of they usually do play around Someday.
Exactly.
So what is going on tonight where that priority has just gone downhill? I think that they thought they were going to get the 1v1 or the 2v2, the standard lanes in these games, and then they had a game plan for that, but they played the lane swaps very poorly, giving up first blood both times rather needlessly in a lane swap situation.
I mean, especially this game where Score walked up,
terrible,
got flayed and died under turret for no reason at all while the freeze was on and topped by OQ. Just losing in both sides of the map, unforced, was a big problem.
A lot of errors from KT Rolster in this series. You're not going to take that away from Najin, though, who has, I think, come in tonight with a very clear game plan, honestly, and just absolutely vice-like control over the Dragon Pit at the bottom side of the map.
It'd be quite a statement of intent if Najin could win a 2-game series and never give up a single dragon to KT, and not even have paid for it in anything. They're ahead in kills, they're even in turrets. It's not like they're trading dragon control for something else in either of these games.
And that just says so much about Najin as a team, too, and their evolution as shot callers over the course of this season, from the solo queue train wreck of spring to this level of patience and map pressure. And it reminds me a lot more of the old Najin Shield roster, which would win with those side wave pushes and the super minion pushes and just avoid fighting you forever.
And all Najin fans are going to take away from that statement is it time for Najin to make their triumphant return to Worlds?
Oh boy. Watch is destined. You can't stop him.
You just cannot stop Watch from attending Worlds. Someone put that guy on a flight list. That's the only way.
Of course, KT, having never been to Worlds.
Much to your chagrin, of course.
Well, it's, KT, they tend to show up big in the summer season, and yet the spot at Worlds continues to elude them.
Okay. Arrows, bullets, nobody can make it.
I'm used to it, Papa Smithy. I live a life of disappointment as a CLG and KT fan.
Man, the eternal suffering of Monte Cristo, not what I expected to be your biography title. But with those two teams, man.
At least you liked Samsung before it was cool, and then they got good.
Yeah, I was the hipster Samsung Blue fan that was like, wow, there's 2 GSG guys on this lineup. Actually, I think there even was 3 at the time with Easy Hoon still there. And yeah, they turned out pretty good. The only OGN event I managed to attend was a spring finals, and they just happened to make it and win it. So I am destined for greatness when it comes to the teams I follow. I'm still a Samsung fan now, though. That's not going so well.
I think there's some bright spots, though.
True.
All right, well, here comes the siege in the mid lane. Just more play around this dragon, and why would Najin do anything else? They can easily snowball off these dragons. They're playing this comp absolutely as they should. Just keep forcing KT to engage into you. That they don't have any way to do it.
Our flash is available, so you'd have to think Najin's being poor with their position if even those flashes are relevant. Melee champions need to get into melee range for their CC. A lot of control over this particular choke. Somebody's going to walk through it himself.
They only have OQ there right now doing damage for the sign. Someday getting very low. Pure nearly dies.
Oh.
There's a 4-man equalizer. Holy cow, that AoE. Duke just going on cleanup duty after that engage. And KT, that engage just doesn't work. The Renekton gets hooked, and there is nothing they can do to CC OQ. OQ had the freest number of auto attacks on the side that I have seen from an AD in a while.
And all KT can do with these melee champions is try to get in melee range for CC, which means the moment they realize they have to back away, they layer on a beautiful equalizer from Duke. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. KT.
Well, I think this composition has obvious flaws to it when it was selected, and I'm so confused because looking at the start of the season, KT's draft was so airtight. They were getting away with picking a lot of power picks, really intelligent compositions. But where has that gone now for them? Because picking this Renekton, picking a composition with no engage means that this Renekton is never going to be useful as long as Najin keeps just pushing them into these face checks. Najin realizes this. They set up on the dragon every time, and KT doesn't have a choice.
And it isn't just the compositional picks, Montecristo. It was the rotational play from KT as well. I note one of their first series, it might have been against Anarchy. It was very early in the season. They fast pushed down the turret of Ixu with Sivir, which of course has been one of their big pickups. Fast pushed it, ensured that the lane would reverse push. Hecarim went top with no...
Uh-oh, here we go. Edge going to get engaged, but actually OQ comes in from the side with just an auto attack. OQ just had the red buff stolen away from him by Score. Anyway, continue. Early in this game.
Yeah, they engineered a reverse push against a no-flash level 4 Hecarim and then just pathed Score on Rek'Sai to top and ganked him, and it was just all very clean, had a lot of forethought. Here they're drafting comps that have power. For example, Renekton and Rek'Sai are going to really win a skirmish battle top against Rumble and Evelynn, but we've never really said the words Renekton and Rek'Sai together because he's never ganked the lane.
And now that is just outside of the realm of possibility. OQ, he basically has no threat this game. And as a Sivir, that is highly problematic because if you leave a Sivir with no threat, well, Sivir happens to then become one of the highest DPS AD carries because she has that ricochet and the auto attack reset, can do an absolutely ungodly amount of damage. The only thing that usually prevents her from doing that is the short range and the threat of engage, but without that, might as well just be free autos.
And if you just roll your head through all the games you've cast, Montecristo, how many times have you said a Sivir who fights so aggressively with her tank line, usually in less than 500 auto attack range, has had little to no threat? It's one of the most risky champions to do the damage, but can do it so well if there's no one in 500 range to do damage to her. But this game, as you mentioned, it's melee range or nothing for KT, and that's just serving up kill after kill to OQ.
Arrow's going to get caught out here, has to Valk. OQ coming up from the bottom side. Taking a look at items as well. Someday, going for the Black Cleaver again, except this time there's not the same synergy that he had in the last game with that Sivir. Corki and the Victor not going to be really benefiting from the stacks he puts down to the same degree.
CDR is helpful in a fight, but I completely agree. You need at least one true AD champion to be able to synergize. You could argue Score, but of course not building any true damage herself is the Rek'Sai. The Phage helps him navigate fights. Maybe it makes him a bit more sticky because the Rage passive gives him that 20 flat movement speed, but it's not really itemizing for team fights. He finishes the Black Cleaver. Now, he spent a lot of gold on offensive stats, and if he just gets kited and dies, it just, it's wasted gold.
You know what's going to happen?
What's going to happen?
He's going to get kited and die.
That's a spoiler right there, Monty, because that's almost 100% going to happen.
Here's a question. Is it a spoiler if I'm actually a seer and can see the future?
I mean, to me it would be, because I don't know that you're that. Now you're spoiling that you're a seer.
I said, would it be? It's a hypothetical.
If I did it.
I see how it is.
Yes. Conditional statements abound. What's the conditional statement for KT's victory here? if everyone DCs.
Yeah, that's about the level we're looking at. Fixer gets caught out. Watch the follow-up damage. There's an equalizer. Are they going to keep going in? Yes, OQ's just going to flash. Edge of the front lines, but he's going to get torched by Duke and poisoned by Cassiopeia. Goong with the kill onto Victor.
And Najin looked to be turning this into a Baron. We're going to see the wave clear in mid. Who's alive? Certainly not Score. Now, he does have the ultimate available when it respawns, and there is a tunnel towards the blue buff, but 20 seconds looking like a hell of a long time when the Baron's already at 4,000 health.
Yeah, that is going to be very rapid. Cassiopeia and the Leandries doing their work on the Baron. Najin cleanly grabs the purple worm. And Arrow just getting caught out right here. OQ isn't blown back, actually looked like, because of the spell shield.
And then you see that once again the equalizer comes good, mostly for the CC effect, but the triple flash play from Pure was what really allowed them to come out to this fight with more than one kill.
And a great fight from Najin, finding Arrow by himself. I loved OQ's aggressive flash right there, getting more and more damage down after the Duke equalizer and the follow-up on that ability.
And I must say, I've never been a fan of Arrow on the Corki. We've seen very long games where he just doesn't get much damage done, and Trinity Force Bloodthirst does a little bit of poke, but certainly no real damage, because it's just not damage modified. It's not attack speed or crit.
Yeah, and he may not need that much damage right now. Evelyn just starting to get tanky. Duke has his Zonias, but there's not a really big true tank on this team yet. But yes, the later this game goes, the bigger problem that Bloodthirster becomes.
Imagine just poking around 3-0 in Dragons. They can easily kite back and have so much advanced warding and minion waves pushing in as Oku just goes crazy on Someday. Remember, he has no armor whatsoever. Almost dies to what, 4-5 auto attacks?
Well, OQ zeroing in on a Bloodthirster right now. He's got so much money. And that means that Someday can't really split push any longer either.
Purely itemized to try and tussle with Rumble, a tussle that we never saw, that was oft alluded to in Champion Select, but never actually happened. Another auto turret goes down, only one left on the map, and Najin gonna make it academic and pick up that 4th dragon.
Wow, so this will set them up for a 40-minute dragon number 5 if they want to go for it. The dragon drought for KT stretches into 9 consecutives in this best of 3.
Gotta ask the statisticians out there, has there been a best of 3 series where one team did not pick up a single dragon? Okay, maybe in a first v last, but even then. Okay,
Najin going hard again. Edge still trying to play the outside. No further commitment. There's the Cimarrold now. Now they want to go in. Equalizer into the choke point, into the jungle. Not sure there's going to be enough follow-up damage, though. Goong wants the flank, but there's not really a whole lot they could do there.
Score chilled on the equalizer for about 4 ticks, took 800 health, but they will be able to pick up their blue buff. Not surrendering much map control. That time, OQ's ultimate didn't really lead to a lot.
No, I think a little bit. Split call there from Najin, kind of decided to engage, then disengage, and then re-engage again, and by that time, KT was too far gone to make it work. And actually, they're going to lose a tower for it in the end, or very close.
Dramatically out position, but even just pure opening up was enough to dissuade KT and get them to back away. 4 minutes or so, 5 minutes even, till Dragon spawns, and that forces a fight from KT. It was notable that the 4th Dragon was in complete vision of KT, so they do have an exact timer. But is there a fight they can win 8,000 gold behind with this Renekton that really hasn't contributed much over the course of these 2 games?
With their very large lack of engage, you have to think that the best situation is some sort of vision advantage where Someday happens to flash over a wall and get onto OQ instantly. It's about the best you could hope for in any situation here from KT.
It's just not many percentage plays for KT, and that's how they drafted. They went for something very linear. They knew they had a lot of melee champs. They knew they needed to win the laning phase quite extensively. That's the ultimate use.
That's going to be a flank onto the carries of KT. Duke gets right on top of Arrow, going to Zonias just to keep himself alive. Fixer has to flash out of that. Someday flashing as well, but OQ on the hunt, and that is a dead crocodile. Nice new cowboy boots for OQ right there.
to go along with his motley crew. 4 items, pushing very strong into the mid lane. Still no true armored item, only just slight armor picked up. Duke's dueling against Arrow, has the flash available, overheats for the big damage auto attack. And you can pretty much pencil this one in. Najin going to break the base easily.
Yeah, they will. Keep on walking forward as well. OQ with the big Bloodthirster shield is not going to be afraid. That's it. And another inhibitor down. They can wait out. Only 3 minutes until the next dragon. How cautiously would they like to play this game? One would think they'd like to play pretty cautiously. Man, Duke has been great.
Away from his usual kind of playstyle. He's been early picking Hecarim and then dealing with bad matchups like the Gnar, like a beast most of the season, 4-1 on that Gnar. But now he moves over to the meta favorite of the 2 top laners we're going to see in the next match. Both Marin and Trace have been really prioritizing that Rumble, and you can see why. Even when whenever you can hit those equalizers, both the zoning equalizers and the layering of that spell have been lovely.
Well, one thing about Duke that I've noticed is that while he does have that great laning phase, and he's very dive resistant, his fault is that sometimes he's a bit late to the party when his team fights. This series, he has been there every single time with his team to follow up at the right time, and that is unusual for him as a player. I know from talking to people that sometimes he's not the chattiest in terms of voice comms, and he gets rather quiet, so it has been an issue that I know Najin has had in terms of getting him to communicate in the best possible manner with the team, but he's been really on point this evening.
And honestly, putting him on Rumble duty basically forces that playstyle because you're not building Trinity Force like the Hecarim, you're not building damage in general, your turret pushing threat is quite minimal. You really excel in team fights, and he rushed the Leandries, he's been in position. If this helps him develop that side of the game on champions that do have that split push pressure, it could be beneficial for the team as a whole, as the Death Sentence does land, but not committing on a dive on score.
No, and they're just going to back off right there. OQ taking the Lantern. And Goong slowly pushing up the super minion wave in the mid lane.
It's a minute between Baron and 5th Dragon now. How do Najin want to play around these objectives? They're going to have the Scuttle Crab vision, so guaranteed vision for the next 2 minutes around the Baron that's going to spawn in 10 seconds. Could be big. They cancel the back on Fixer, but don't look for much more.
Well, they could just do it so fast. As Evelyn makes her way, Watch that now wants to get into this Baron pit.
They don't have blue buff on Goong, so he's going to use a lot of his mana bar to take this down. Scores in the area, and Baron's at 5,000 health.
TP coming in from Someday, and Pure trying to flay people backwards. Watch on the side. Here comes Duke. Someday just going to get kited out right there. Box zoning out the rest of the team, and that is Fixer falling also. Arrow on the opposite side. Watch dies. So does Pure, but where is the follow-up? OQ here chasing away Edge. Does he want to go for this? More poison down on to score. Duke with the flank. Can they get Goong? The answer is no. Goong gets a little bit of a heal there. It's like dangerous game, baby.
They're looking to maybe go back and pick up this Baron. Notably, the Dragon is up in 15 seconds. It'd be the safer objective. But they're going to try and rush it down even without the smite, and even though Goong's at 50% mana, seems like it's still going to be academic.
Yeah, it is. They're going to back off. However, this could... No, it's not going to result in... I lied. It's not going to result in a counter dragon at all. Everyone from Najin will get there in plenty of time. No TP on Someday. Void Rush on score, but he still got 20 seconds, so still no shot. That was the right call for sure for Najin.
And it's just... what a KT to do with fiercely melee champions, with melee range engaged, fighting around a Baron with an obvious choke for them to back into that plays right into Rumble's hands. The equalizer splits the team. They pick up both the diver and dive onto the enemy. Najin playing these team fights so intelligently and stacking advantages. 5th Dragon and Baron picked up at 40 minutes.
Great shot calling. Just... the Baron was definitely the right call based on the timers and the summoners and ultimates available.
And just the terrain. It's just not team fightable for KT, which, look, probably tells you a lot about their awkward drafting this game. But even those edge cases where they could have gotten a big lead in the laning phase, they just never really played into them.
OQ has 2 static shivs.
Gives you a lot of movement speed, but probably not the best use of gold.
Yeah, could have gone Phantom Dancer, but whatever.
Yeah, he probably didn't have the gold found dance. There's about 200-300 between the two, but I'm not going to justify the pickup. It's a bit of manners coming through in the items.
I think this is a bit of manners coming through in the items.
Yomu's Ghostblade probably would have been a better investment too if he was lower on the gold, but they're going to push up 5th Dragon Baron buff minions. Dive, take the turret, do whatever you want.
Good luck to KT as they trying to hold out 2 5-Dragon games back-to-back from Najin. I can say we have never seen that this season.
2 5-Dragon shutouts, Monte Cristo.
Jeez. What a dominating performance from Najin here against KT. We definitely expected more of a fight, but Najin looking very tight and KT confused over the course of this series.
They're being surprisingly defensive with all the buffs. Finally popped the ultimate from Oku, but looks like once again the team isn't committing to any sort of dive. They're just going to swiftly back away.
Well, at the same time, they know that's KT's only way to win this game. So they really shouldn't do that. They should just play this methodically. They're going to cut off the wave right here. Duke, the designated player to go clear out these minions and then just stop the wave right outside of the base and walk forward with his own minions. It's going to take some time, but this is how you want to play it if you're Najin, honestly.
And it takes 5 dragons, but finally Duke is a threat to minion waves. Because, of course, the Flame Splitter does reduce damage to minions, but because every tick applies the 40 damage from the 5th dragon, you clear pretty good.
Pretty well. Pretty well.
This is where we've gotten to, the grammar fight.
Well, there's nothing else to fight about in this game. Certainly KT's not going to be fighting, so
I
I fight with you instead.
That's fair.
I would say that our fight is not as one-sided, but that would be a lie. Okay, here we go. As Edge just going to back away off the equalizer. And now Score gets hit by the Flay. Goong going to pick up the kill. Someday tries to get into the mix. Box goes down immediately. And Goong getting low, but not quite low enough. Hook onto Arrow. And there is OQ with the triple kill. And that's going to be the end of this game.
A massive crit coming through from OQ. That'll be the game. Complete whitewash from Najin in many different ways. 10-0 in the Dragon counter over 2 games. Unheard of neutral control by Najin EM Fire.
And as questionable as KT was tonight, you cannot take away the fact that Najin really showed some excellent shot calling, much better map movement than we've seen in the past. I was concerned after seeing that big loss to Jin Air, but they bounced back hard, and KT has to do some reevaluating in the second half of this season. That second round robin Edge in particular, he got that advantage in the mid lane, but then lost it nearly immediately due to bad decision making.
It's notable that Edge, look, he played 2 games against Spenu. That was always going to be a one-side series. A fairly impressive performance against Faker in game 2 in a game that was, again, still very one-sided.